Right now everyone is busy hyping up how dominant the Indiana Fever look, but almost nobody is willing to confront the real question: what happens the moment this system cracks, because sooner or later it will, and when that pressure hits, everything is going to fall squarely on Stephanie White. If you believe this team would just roll into the season, play it safe, and accept mediocrity, you've completely misread the situation. Because behind the scenes at training camp something far more aggressive is taking shape, something that's already sending shockwaves across the entire WNBA, and the rest of the league should be paying very close attention, because this isn't the same franchise anymore. This is a team that has flipped its identity, cranked up its intensity, sharpened its execution, and is moving with a level of confidence and edge that hasn't been seen in years. And while the media spent the off-season spinning narratives, the real story is unfolding on the court, where early training camp signs are making it clear, this team isn't just improving, they're quietly building something that could turn into a complete powerhouse. Once you actually break down the raw footage, study the chemistry, and watch the individual leaps in development paired with the relentless competitive edge in every single drill, it becomes impossible to ignore the reality that the Indiana Fever are no longer some long-term rebuilding project. They're aggressively chasing dominance right now. And the level of focus combined with the sheer talent on display is enough to give any defensive coordinator nightmares trying to scheme against them. And at the center of this entire shift sits the undeniable, gravity-warping presence of Caitlin Clark, because while everyone already knows about the deep logo threes and the scoring accolades, what's emerging in this training camp is a completely evolved version of her game built on elite, lightning-fast processing and total offensive control, where she's no longer just reacting to defenses but actively manipulating them in real time, bending entire defensive structures to her will and dictating the flow of the game at a level that changes everything.
I like what I'm seeing, I do. I think she has a lot of potential. I wasn't totally loving what KK did in that set. She kind of got worked by the spin move from that practice player. And I did want to show you guys something that was going viral, and it is a one-handed pass from Caitlin over to Maisha Hines-Allen, who looks...
Just focus on the mechanics of that one-handed, thread the needle dart to Nalissa Smith. This isn't some routine read and react sequence, this is the signature of a true floor general mapping every inch of the court in milliseconds, and you can see the reaction on the receiver's face because even she knows that pass shouldn't have been possible, when a guard can manipulate weak side help with her eyes, freeze the primary defender with a subtle hesitation, and then fire a high-velocity, one-handed laser through a microscopic window before the defense even processes the action. You're dealing with an offensive engine that breaks the math of the game, and that's exactly what Caitlin Clark is doing right now, forcing opponents into an impossible dilemma where blitzing the pick and roll only leads to surgical dissections and open rollers or corner shooters, while dropping back hands the most dangerous perimeter shooter in the game the exact space she needs to pull up and crush momentum in an instant. What's even more alarming is how synchronized she already looks with her teammates, operating on a shared rhythm that mirrors the absolute peak of elite point guard play we've seen across the WNBA, drawing shades of those iconic threading passes from Jonquel Jones but unfolding here in real time, and that's what makes this so dangerous because the entire team is starting to move on her frequency, amplifying her impact, and when you combine that with the raw scoring firepower she brings, the defensive gravity she commands stretches the floor to its breaking point, creating wide-open lanes for everyone else, yet the moment she decides to hunt her own shot, it turns into something almost artistic, a controlled explosion that feels inevitable and impossible to stop.
Some wing action, 1, there's 2, 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row. Speaking of thirst traps,
even during warm-ups, when she's lacing up those Kobe player exclusives and working with a weighted ball to fine-tune every detail of her release, you can see the obsession behind the craft, and then she casually drifts beyond the arc and knocks down 5 straight deep threes with a release so quick and a form so smooth it barely looks like she's trying. But the real story isn't just the makes, it's the damage this does to a defense. Because when someone like Caitlin Clark can confidently pull up from 30 feet without breaking rhythm, defenders are forced to extend all the way out to the logo, which completely warps the geometry of the floor, opening huge driving lanes, destroying help-side structure, and creating impossible closeout angles that lead to blowbys and full defensive breakdowns, and that's why she's not just putting points on the board. She's fundamentally bending how the game is played while injecting a contagious confidence into the entire Indiana Fever roster. But while all eyes stay locked on the superstar point guard, there's another storyline quietly building behind the scenes that could end up being the real X-factor this season, and it revolves around Justine Pissott, because in the modern WNBA landscape where roster spots are brutally limited and every decision is a high-stakes puzzle, securing and developing second-round talent is anything but easy. Yet the Fever made a calculated move bringing her into a developmental role, and now she's starting to justify every bit of that belief, flashing a 6 feet 4 inches frame with a long wingspan that instantly stands out, and in a league built on spacing, switching, and versatility, having a tall wing who can defend multiple positions, stretch the floor, and disrupt passing lanes is incredibly valuable, and she's stepping onto the practice floor already proving she belongs, making it clear this isn't just a long-term project, but a potential difference maker in the making.
So I think having her in that developmental slot was tactical. Looks like she's ready for the switch right there. Gets her arms up for the nice contest.
The moment you break down this defensive possession, it jumps off the screen how advanced her lateral quickness and defensive IQ already are, as she instantly reads the screening action, smoothly switches onto the perimeter ball handler, and then uses that massive wingspan to rise up into a perfectly timed, highly effective contest, showcasing exactly why she's such a fascinating prospect. This is the kind of defensive versatility that elite teams crave, because being able to trust a 6 feet 4 inches wing like Justine Pissott to switch onto smaller, quicker guards without collapsing the entire defensive structure is a rare advantage, and she's not just holding her ground out there, she's actively disrupting offensive rhythm with disciplined closeouts, impressive balance for her size, and a level of physicality that makes it clear she's not intimidated by anyone sharing the floor, and that impact doesn't stop on the perimeter either. Because for a player in today's WNBA to truly carve out a role, she has to withstand the inevitable mismatch hunting in the post, where offenses will repeatedly try to drag longer wings down to the block to test their strength and fundamentals, and the early signs suggest she's embracing that challenge rather than avoiding it.
Decent footwork, lateral movement. Had her arms up, didn't make that pass easy. Oh, okay.
Zero in on the footwork and lateral movement in this rep and you immediately see the discipline, because matched up against a skilled practice player she doesn't bite on the first fake or give up space, she stays grounded, absorbs contact, maintains verticality, and stretches that massive wingspan to shrink the passing window to almost nothing, and even when hit with a complex dream shake variation she battles through it. Which is exactly what matters at this stage, not flawless execution every possession, but the raw, undeniable upside she's flashing, and it's why the Indiana Fever may have quietly struck gold by keeping Justine Pissott in the building, because if she keeps sharpening her defensive reads and becomes consistent from the perimeter, she profiles as that ideal 3 and D wing who can transform an entire second unit. A move that signals this franchise isn't just thinking about a starting 5 but constructing a deep, versatile roster built to survive the grind of a full WNBA season. And now the spotlight shifts to perhaps the most talked about storyline in camp, the arrival and immediate cultural impact of Raven Johnson, where months of media-fueled drama tried to paint her history with Caitlin Clark as locker room tension, yet she shut that down instantly with poise and professionalism, stepping to the microphones with positivity, energy, and clear respect for the veterans, openly crediting leaders like Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull for guiding her through the system, but that calm, upbeat presence flips the moment she hits the court, where she turns into a relentless defensive force that makes life miserable for opposing ball handlers.
Here, what do you think, obviously, as Defensive Player of the Year, you can bring to that?
Yeah, my defense tenacity. I'm like a gnat on the ball. Every time when I get the defense, I want to be the person to turn people over and get my teammates extra possessions to shoot the ball or whatever that may be. But yeah, when it comes to defense, I think that's what I thrive in, which is...
When she breaks down her own defensive identity, calling herself a gnat on the ball, it perfectly captures the kind of nightmare presence she brings to opposing guards, because Raven Johnson isn't just playing defense, she's hunting disruption, taking pride in ripping the ball loose, blowing up offensive rhythm, forcing live ball turnovers, and turning defense into instant offense for her team. And within the structure of the Indiana Fever, this role becomes absolutely critical, because having a relentless point of attack stopper in the backcourt allows Caitlin Clark to conserve energy, avoid unnecessary physical battles through screens, and stay fresh to fully unleash her offensive control, while Johnson embraces the chaos, thrives in the dirty work, and sets the tone as the defensive engine, reshaping the mentality of the second unit. And while the young talent is explosive, none of it holds together without veteran stability, which is where Kelsey Mitchell steps in as the emotional and cultural anchor, reinforcing a sense of belief and continuity by openly valuing her connection with teammates like Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and the rest of the core, because that genuine trust isn't just talk, it directly translates onto the court through sharper ball movement, instinctive extra passes, and perfectly timed defensive rotations. And when you combine that veteran presence with the floor spacing and reliability that players like Hull provide, you start to see the blueprint of a system that isn't just talented, but deeply connected, balanced, and capable of overwhelming opponents on both ends of the floor.
With some offensive sets that are always fun to watch. Positive vibes, positive vibes. All right, Lexi 3-ball, that's what we want to see more of this season. Sophie at the wing. It's her spot. Oh, and the coveted Caitlin Clark 3-ball. If there is anything you guys want to see, please pop down in the comments. Don't hesitate to ask. That's why I put some Justine Pissott highlights in this video.
As you watch these offensive sets unfold in practice, it becomes crystal clear just how lethal this team is going to be in the half-court, with the ball snapping around the floor, off-ball screens being set with real intent, and spacing that stretches the defense to its absolute limits. As Lexi Hull drifts into her comfort zone in the corner and confidently knocks down the three, Sophie Cunningham makes smart, effective reads from the wing. And then the possession gets punctuated by a signature deep shot from Caitlin Clark, which is exactly what true offensive synergy looks like, a system where the defense is constantly scrambling, rotating, and closing out under pressure while bracing for the next split-second decision. And while everything feels sharp right now, the energy, the chemistry, the execution, the real challenge isn't what happens in training camp, it's what happens when things inevitably break down. Because that's when all eyes turn to Stephanie White, a coach with a proven defensive pedigree from her time building elite systems, but now facing a completely different reality in managing a generational offensive force. And the real question isn't whether she can design schemes, it's whether she has the flexibility and trust to let Clark take over when the plan collapses, because history has shown that rigid systems often fail transcendent talent. And when the pressure peaks and defenses throw everything they have to disrupt the flow, the defining decision will be whether she tries to control every detail from the sideline or simply puts the ball in the hands of the league's most dangerous problem solver and lets her operate, because Clark isn't just another player in this system, she is the engine, the closer, and ultimately the force that can carry this Indiana Fever to championship contention. And the biggest challenge for White this season won't be teaching her how to play. It will be recognizing the exact moment to step aside and let greatness take over. So if you want more deep, high-level breakdowns like this, make sure you hit that like button and stay locked in for the next analysis.